Okay, we are recording.
Sweet. All right. So we're just gonna do the one part of the stomach here. You can tell she's kind of got this weird little indent. So we can do a little shading on that, and I'll show you. Let me get my palette in here. I'll show you kind of the process as far as how I do my skin tones. So it's depending on the shade I want the skin tone to end at. A lot of times will just dictate how many mixes I go through. My standard that I do normally is base coat, and then I'll do a couple of mixes of Bugman and Cadian, and then I'll do just Cadian, and then I'll mix in Kislev Flesh to do some like extreme highlights. And a lot of times it's not like a straightforward, oh, 50-50, 25-75 or whatever. It's just I'm mixing on my palette and just dipping in a little bit more of the lighter tones um till I get it looking how I want basically. There's no science to it. And get a little on my palette here, add a little water. My Bugman's or yeah, Bugman's glow I've had for a minute, so it's getting real extra tacky. But for the stomach that I'm doing, we don't need a lot. Alright, so I'll just lay down my base coat on her little tummy here. And I always, mostly always, I would say like 90% always prime in black. These ones I primed in black and did it like a zenithal on it because I thought I was going to do some airbrushing on it and doing with some contrast paints, but I went a different way. And you can also, well, we might not be able to tell, but she's kind of doing this like back arch thing. So the top part, which is kind of like the start of her rib cage, is kind of poking out. I don't think you can really see it. But what I'm going to try to do is add a little, it's like right there where that little ball of light is reflecting. Her ribs are kind of poking out right there. And you can also see her hip bone poking out right there as well. So I'm going to try to add some highlights onto those to make those show a little bit more. And then depending on your model and what you primed it in, you might need to do one or two, but it's really important to get that base coat down nice and solid. With the L's, I want to end in a very kind of very light Kislev flesh tone. Ideally, um, for this, I might not go super light just to kind of be able to show you guys how it's gonna end up as just like a normal like Caucasian skin tone. All right, so I've got my next two or my next tone out. Um, I'm actually, I'm gonna wait for this to dry. I'm gonna do one more base coat, but essentially, after just watering it down, I would grab a little bit of that Bugman and just start mixing it and create kind of like a little mid-tone there. And you can see on the palette, I don't know if it shows up, but right here, it's obviously it's darker, and as it goes out to this end, it gets a little bit lighter. So you can see your gradient right there, and you can just go in and pull from anywhere in here for your next tone. Obviously, I want to start here and work my way out this way, but we're going to add a little bit more of a base coat on her because I can see some gray still showing through. That's a lot better. While we're here, while the stomach's drying, I'm just going to hit her. Little face up. I wish I had a better model primed and ready to go to show you how to do eyes, but I don't at the moment. And like all these dudes have like masks on. All right, our stomach's good. So I'm going to take this next tone, and this is going to be kind of like almost like a glazing technique. So glazing, after you get your color, I add a little bit more water than what's needed. Pull it aside, and you can see how you can still see the color, but it's really thin. It's not opaque. So that's what I'm looking for right here. Is this nice thin shade. And what I do that helps me do glazing, because wherever I move my brush to and stop and lift off, that's where that color, you can see that little dot, that's where the most of that color is going to be deposited. So since I want it on the highest part of the model, what I do is I just flip it upside down. And since I want it to be on this top crest of her ribs, I'll just pull down and lift up right there on the top part of her ribs. One other thing that I do is once I add water into my mix, I want to use a paper towel to take out most of it. So I'll just touch the paper towel, and you can see right here, see it just pulls it out. I want it to where it's like a tiny little dot like that. This little bit is just barely coming out. And then I'll start just pulling, starting from the bottom, I guess, essentially, and then pulling that little dot up to the top. Almost now I'm just like tapping. Now with glazing, because you're putting on such a small amount of pigment, it takes a couple passes. So that's pass one. So I'll just wait. Dries pretty quick. You want to make sure it's dried all the way, because if you go back in and you try it again, you'll end up tearing the first layer, and then you'll have this really weird little divot in your model in the paint that you have to try to fix, which is really quite annoying. I'm gonna hit her little hip bone over here. You don't have to flip the model upside down. I just find it easier to go down than do like a up stroke. We can try. So I've got 2 layers on this front side. It's gonna. My headset died. It's gonna be the brightest side, so it's already got a 2 count as I think of it in my head. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start doing some lightning on the rest of the model, and everything else is gonna essentially be at a 1 count. That'll put my stomach at a 3 count. So it'll have 3 layers to the 1 layer on the other sides, if that makes sense. And then I'm just pulling it up to those points. I'm also making sure I'm not putting anything in that little divot that's in the middle of her stomach. I don't know why that's there. It's a really weird sculpt. But and then I'll go back, put just a couple dots on her hip bone. So now that I got a couple layers of that mid-tone, now I'm gonna move to the next kind of little step in my